Hello and a very warm welcome to you. Well, once again, we're looking at pictures of the Bass Rock. Today's video is a response to the only flat earther thus far who has proposed an explanation for the challenge that I set. So I published a video in which I showed this image of the Bass Rock simply to show the size and shape of the Bass Rock. It's taken from about 37-meter elevation at Kinghorn in Fife. And I showed this picture, which is taken from a 5-meter elevation at Dalgety Bay in Fife of the same island. And I superimposed one on the other and showed by changing the transparency that they overlap nicely and that clearly the shots taken from Dalgety Bay from 5-meter elevation we see far less of the Bass Rock than we do from higher elevation at Kinghorn, closer to the Bass Rock. Now, as I say, one flat earther has actually tried to come up with a flat Earth explanation for this observation. So today's video is a response to them. And I'd like to thank them for actually going to the trouble to try and come up with an explanation. Unfortunately, their explanation and their analysis leave a great deal to be desired. And I'm going to spend this video just pointing out the flaws in the explanation offered, as well as pointing out one or two little issues with the approach that they have taken to doing to this challenge. Okay, so as I said, one flat earther has actually tried to come up with some sort of an explanation. They go by the name of The Plain Truth on YouTube, and this is the latest video with an attempt to explain my observation. Now, the video is quite long, about 55 minutes. It covers a lot of ground that doesn't involve my particular observation, but others that are perhaps of a similar nature. This video is going to get quite long, this video of mine. I don't want it to get too long. I'm just going to show a couple of little parts of Travis's video, just to illustrate a couple of points about his approach and his inaccurate analysis.
Give me a second, I'm just going to find my Miles Davis shenanigans.
So he calls it Miles Davis shenanigans. If he's accusing me of shenanigans, well, he's very much mistaken. I simply publish something that I've observed that I don't think has a valid flat Earth explanation, and ask flat earthers to explain it. It really is that simple. In this video, he will present other observations by other people from similar places, which are different to mine, but that's really completely irrelevant. I saw what I saw, a camera captured it, and I've published it. And if the Earth is flat, you have to be able to explain that in terms of a flat Earth. We will continue for a bit because it becomes even more revealing.
As I mentioned before, we had a super spy, a surreptitious infiltrator going to the exact same location that Miles did on another day.
Well, super spy, no. Somebody else went there and took some more video of the same sorts of observations as I did. Some of their video and some of their observations are taken, I think, from very similar location to me, and others are taken from a different location. And here is one of the problems. Travis doesn't seem to understand or doesn't seem to be able to analyze the observations to see that there are, some of them are from different locations. And the fact that he makes that error is, well, is the point that I want to make. Attention to detail is important.
Is from the 5-meter height at Dalgety Bay. This is the same perspective that Miles demonstrates in his
no, it isn't.
Video, where he took an unbelievably incredulous observation of Bass Rock through massive.
I'll interrupt here very briefly. Travis says that this is an incredulous observation, but the Super Spy has published similar observations that they took when they were there. They even appear in this video.
Sorry. All right. This is the end result and the washed out raw data. Miles is going to show us, okay? This perspective is this perspective.
No, it isn't. So if you look at my camera location and the view from it, you can see Inchkeith Island here, Inchcolm Island closer to the camera here, and a small rocky island here. And there's a small pilot vessel just moored in front of it.
This is this.
It's not this. Here we see Inchcolm Island, we see the small rocky island, but we can't see Inchkeith Island because it is hidden behind Inchcolm Island. The reason it's hidden behind Inchcolm Island is because it's taken from a completely different location.
This is this.
And Travis, if you have looked at those pictures and you think they are of the same location, then, well, that just shows how poorly you view and analyze things. I'll move on to make one other point if I can. The observation taken by the Super Spy is that Bass Rock here. So this is looking at a different location. The rocky island is here. You can see a little bit behind that hand there, and these rocks poking out here. This is Inchcolm Island here. Travis thinks that this buoy is the same buoy as is in my picture, and it isn't. It's a completely different buoy, which is closer to the camera than the one in my picture. Again, an important error. Not crucial to Travis's explanation, but still an important error. Travis also says that the reason we see these other islands in the distance in this particular observation is because of atmospheric refraction and the effect known as looming. This is a very odd claim for a flat earther to be making, because on a flat earth there is absolutely no need for looming in order for us to be able to see these islands. If the earth was flat, we should be able to see these islands all the time, and not only when conditions favour atmospheric refraction of a type that causes them to loom up. So Travis seems to completely misunderstand the whole point of the looming atmospheric refraction argument. I will just show one more bit from Travis's video. I don't want to witter on too long, but these are other observations from the so-called super spy. This is my picture showing the Bass Rock, and this is one of theirs, which and another one, which clearly show that a large portion of the Bass Rock is hidden from view. Not perhaps quite as much as mine.
Same height.
This could be, pardon me for doing that, this could be due to different tides, heights, camera heights on the day, and so on. We know that they weren't necessarily standing in exactly the same spot that I was. So Travis seems to call my observation bizarre or strange or incredulous, I think was the word he used, and yet his own supposed super spy came up with things that are very similar. So that's really all I want to say about Travis's video. His explanation is something called proximate looming or proximate refraction. Let's have a little look at what he means by that, as far as I've been able to ascertain, and point out some really glaring problems that his explanation has. So I want to consider here Travis's claim of proximate refraction or proximate looming as an explanation for my Bass Rock observation. I hope I don't strawman Travis his explanation here. I've done my best to try to understand what he's talking about, what he means by proximate looming. I've had long conversations with him in the comments section on my videos, and I've watched as many of these videos as I can bear in an effort to understand what he means. So I've drawn a straight line here to represent what Travis thinks the surface of the Earth is like, a flat plane. And the triangle on the right hand side is to illustrate an object out to sea. So if the blue line represents the surface of the ocean or the surface of the sea, and the triangle represents an island, an oil rig, a ship, a lighthouse, some sort of structure out to sea. The Bass Rock in my particular observation, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Now, what I think Travis is trying to say is that light coming from nearby objects or the surface is refracted in a way similar to this line on the screen. This is just for illustration purposes. So if you imagine the observer being at this end of the red line, light from here will be refracted up so that the observer sees it or the camera detects it. But the location in the image that water would actually assume would not be quite low down in the image, but much higher up, following the path of the light as it arrives at the camera. So the light would appear this sort of height in the image rather than this sort of height. So if we consider light coming to the camera from the object in the distance, light from low down on the object would encounter or would travel the path of the light coming from the surface here. And Travis's argument is that the light from the surface here would block the light coming from the object. Now, this actually does not correspond to what we know or understand about the nature of light. And I'm going to talk about that for a moment or two. I hope I've got my animations correct. I've got another line here. Okay, so light coming from above here would come to the camera or the observer and would not be interrupted by this light coming from the surface close to the observer. Now, superficially, this may sound like a sound explanation. Travis is saying that the light from close to the observer, so in this picture of the Bass Rock is, oops, pardon me, I'll go back, get rid of that for the moment. Bass Rock is 44 kilometers away. Buoy here, which is close to the horizon, just close, a little bit closer to the camera than the horizon, but not much, is 7.65 kilometers away. And so Travis's suggestion is that all the light from the surface up to this point, which we'll say is, I don't know, 8.5 kilometers from the camera, is refracted in this way and appears in the image. And that light from the surface further away is not refracted either at all or not refracted as much. And therefore all we see is this portion of the surface, and that light coming from the Bass Rock does not reach the camera because the light coming from the surface in some way interferes with it or blocks it. Now, in the particular image that I published, the first image that I published when presenting this challenge, the sun was to the east behind a Bass Rock, and a lot of sunlight was reflecting from the surface of the water. And so the Bass Rock and this shipping lane marker buoy were in silhouette in the shot. And we'll talk about that in a moment. But in this particular portion of the image where there's a lot of light reaching the sensor on the camera from the surface, it is reasonable to say that would swamp out any light reaching of the sensor coming from the Bass Rock, from low down on the Bass Rock. Because the Bass Rock is largely in silhouette, there is a general absence of light reaching the sensor from this from the island, and therefore light in the foreground could indeed, block or mean that we don't see the silhouette of the Bass Rock lower down. So superficially, this seems like a perfectly valid explanation, but we have to consider what's happening with the marker buoy as well. So Travis's claim is that the marker buoy is loomed up. So we're not seeing the marker buoy in its true location here. That should be far further down here. We're just seeing the light from the marker buoy being refracted. And this is where the problem arises, or a problem arises for Travis's explanation. We're seeing the marker buoy in silhouette. It's quite dark, it's quite black. Blackness is an absence of light. So we can't be seeing the marker buoy, the light from the marker buoy being refracted up. What Travis is claiming is that the light from around the marker buoy is being refracted up to this location. But most of that light is coming from the sky beyond the Bass Rock, is coming from the Bass Rock itself, or sunlight being scattered by the atmosphere between us and the Bass Rock. If that light were coming from those locations straight to the camera, as the pink line is here, then the absence of light from the marker buoy could not block that. And we should simply not see the marker buoy or any evidence that the marker buoy is there at all. The only way that marker buoy can appear in its position in the image is if it is physically present and blocking the light physically, which is how we know light is blocked. Yes, we can swamp out light by having other light closer to the camera. But what's happening here with the marker buoy is that light is being physically blocked from getting to the camera. So the marker buoy must be in that location. And since the marker buoy is floating on the water must be in that location. So there's your problem, Travis. Think if you're struggling with that idea, think about these birds that are in the image as well. We don't see the light from the sky behind them because they physically block the light from getting to the camera. The same applies to the top of the Bass Rock here. The Bass Rock is physically in the way, preventing the light from the sky beyond it from getting to the camera. So that's one problem, and another way of illustrating the same sort of problem is this second image. Now this was taken at low tide, and you can see there are some rocks exposed here in the foreground. Because it's low tide, it's taken from the same piece of land, but obviously I'm higher above the water because it's low tide, and the marker buoy appears further down in the image because of that fact, and we see a little more of the Bass Rock and even a little bit of the island of Craigleith, and we can even see another marker buoy in the distance here, or part of it. Now the important point to note here is that the Bass Rock appears to be very light in colour, almost white, and that's because it's a bird colony, and it's absolutely covered in bird droppings and birds. The sun in this occasion is not in the east behind the Bass Rock, but in the west. It's a couple of hours before sunset, I think. And the Bass Rock is illuminated by the sun, so we're actually seeing light reflected from the Bass Rock here, whereas here we are seeing an absence of light coming from the Bass Rock. Now, the problem that you've got, Travis, is that there's relatively less light coming from the water. And if your approximate looming idea is correct, then light being reflected from lower on the Bass Rock should have no trouble in reaching the sensor. The sensor is not going to be completely washed out by the light coming from the water. It's the same sort of problem as I posed for the marker buoy in the image on the left. The marker buoy itself appears to be green because that's the colour that this marker buoy is. This one is red. It's painted a dark green colour, and so it appears it absorbs a lot of light that hits it and reflects light only in the green wavelength, and we see that light, and because it is physically there, it blocks out the light coming from the Bass Rock, from the white portion of the Bass Rock behind it. So We also have the island of Craigleith here, which is not a bird colony. The birds don't seem to nest there in anything like the amount, and the top has more vegetation on it. Again, that island is able to block the white light coming from the Bass Rock because it is physically there. So this is one problem that you have, Travis. You have to explain this buoy and maybe explain this image as well. There are probably better images elsewhere. Things to do with lights and lighthouses and lights on land and so on that will illustrate this point even better. But we'll stick with this one for now because it's the one we've been discussing. The second point that we have to make is that although light coming from the top portion of the island can reach the camera, and there's no issue with this, and this could be refracted as we've discussed, and the light from the island of Craigleith could be refracted more than it is here. As in the image that your so-called spy was able to obtain. There is no reason why light from the ocean surface further away than the marker buoy here should not also be refracted so that it's picked up by the camera. Light all the way back, including light from the base of the Bass Rock, ought to be refracted in a similar way to the light close to the camera. And indeed, there's no reason to consider that the atmosphere at the surface of the water in the foreground is of any different refractive index to the atmosphere in the distance that's close to the water. So we should be seeing the same sort of refraction going on. It also needs to be said that there is still a direct line of sight from the base of this island all the way to the camera. Although the light coming from here can wash it out in this picture, they can't wash it out in this picture. There's far less light coming from the surface. So you either need to be able to demonstrate that at some distance from the camera there is a dramatic change in refractive index that can cause this, or come up with some other proposal. And you also need, as I said, to explain why the marker buoy appears there in silhouette. So I look forward to hearing your response to this. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Tequila!